Whether you're waking up frequently in the night to pee and can't get back to sleep, or you're awake every night from 2 to 4 a.m. and can't get back to sleep, this is the episode for you, sister. Tune in to learn what the real reason is for your crummy sleep and what to do about it to get back to a peaceful night. Let's dive in. What's up, sister? Welcome back to the Period Whisperer podcast, the show helping perimenopause and menopause women de-stress your body and decode what it's saying to you so you can own your own health, energy, and weight loss again. If you're new, I'm so happy you're here. I'm Bria. I'm your host, a recovering people pleaser and hustle addict turned functional and holistic hormone specialist. Let's lean in and learn what your body is saying to you. Hey there, sister. Welcome back to the Period Whisperer podcast. How are you feeling in your body today? I gotta tell you, I'm feeling a little tired. A lot of travel, a lot of work, a lot of kids going back to school, a lot of here, there, and everywhere has certainly brought my body into a place where I can feel the fatigue setting in a little bit. And when that happens for me, I know I need to make a few changes. But what is worse is when you are getting yourself to bed at a good night, at a good time, and you're waking up in the middle of the night, whether it's several times to pee or whether it's between 2 and 4 a.m., which is a telltale sign of some real things that we're going to talk about today. There is nothing more frustrating to me than trying to get a good night's sleep and then not being able to. And of course, waking up, just dragging yourself through the day when you know you have so many things you have to accomplish or want to accomplish or are trying to accomplish. And this issue of waking up in the night, of not sleeping well, is one that is like epidemic in proportion in the perimenopause years. We hear it happening more and more as such a significant, symptom of perimenopause. And I really want to pull back some of the covers today and talk to you about why these things might be happening and what you can do about it. Because although we all know that the shifting of hormones in perimenopause begins around the age of 35 or mid 30s for all women and sort of ends when we achieve menopause, it's not necessarily the fact that we don't have enough hormones. It could be a lot of other things impacting our hormones. We can't forget that our hormones, our hormonal system, is impacted and connected to our immune function, our detoxification function, our digestive function, our energy production, our nervous system. They're all connected together. So when there's loss of function or where there's some issues in one of those areas, then that can also be part of the reason that's throwing off our hormones. So I'm not saying it's not your hormones. I just think it's really important for us to not entirely blame them or think we can't support our hormones all on their own by just making some other lifestyle changes. I am all about women not suffering. I'm a big fan of not suffering when we don't need to. And the use of certain things like bioidentical hormones can be really helpful if we need them to be able to sleep better, be able to function better, be able to get results again, be able to feel like ourselves and have energy and lose weight and all of these things that really are so important to us at this time in life and all times in life, but certainly now when more is going on. It's really important to understand that it's not necessarily just our hormone production. It could very well be our metabolization of those hormones. And that's really going to deal more with our detoxification. It's really going to deal with the absorption of those hormones in our body. So when we are waking up frequently in the night or waking up and unable to get back to sleep, we have to look at other parts of the body and not just think, oh, it's my hormones, I'm in perimenopause, this is just how it is, or I should take, hormone replacement therapy or bioidenticals to help. Again, those can be really, really valuable, but before we get to those tools, like anything, we need to make sure that the other systems and functions in our body are working correctly, because it might be a simpler fix than we think. And of course, if the problem does lie in certain habits that we're keeping or certain loss of function somewhere else in our body, it really won't matter if we take a bioidentical or hormone replacement, because the body won't be able to metabolize it or absorb it, and we won't get those benefits. So today I wanted to walk you through 3 reasons you can't sleep in perimenopause, and of course, what to do about it. And I just think we should dive right in, because I think nobody, if you're struggling with sleep right now, you're like, get to the point. I'm tired. I have brain fog. I can't even take this in. So this is one of these Monday down and dirty episodes for you. We're gonna get right to it. So one of the key reasons that you can't sleep in perimenopause is dysregulated blood sugar. And we see this a lot in people who are not eating enough for the energy demand of their body. So it could be that you're, exercising too much, you're doing too much, and you're not eating enough to support that. It could be that you just don't eat enough in general, you don't prioritize your nutrition. It could be that your nutrition isn't ideal for your body type. And your genetic metabolic type. So we all have a very critical genetic metabolic type, which is really the rate at which our cells turn energy into, or turn food and fuel into energy in the body. And if we're eating the wrong fuel mixture to it, if we're eating, too much protein and too many fats and not enough carbohydrates, then that's going to cause problems for some people, not all people. If we are eating too many carbohydrates and not enough protein, not enough fats, that's going to cause problems for other people. So we need to understand that fuel mixture as well. And all of this kind of comes down to, if we are not having, consistent energy throughout the day, if your food is not keeping you full and satisfied to the next meal, like you're feeling like you need to snack a lot, or you're struggling with a lot of cravings, or you're having a lot of energy highs and then big dips, and you're just needing to look for more sugar. These are key indicators that your blood sugar is dysregulated, and that impacts your sleep, because if you're going to bed and your blood sugar is dysregulated, your body needs energy to do the healing and get into a deep sleep that it requires for healing through the night. And for many women, if we don't have regulated blood sugar, if we're not consistent with our nutrition, we haven't sorted that piece out yet, and we're having dysregulated blood sugar issues, then we can wake up in the night because our body doesn't have what it needs to get through the night, to do its job, in the off hours. I kind of think of it like, when we sleep, I imagine this is what it's like, at night in their stocking room at Costco. Like, everyone's trying to get all the boxes unpacked, get everything ready so that everything moves and runs smoothly in the front of the house in the daytime hours. A lot has to happen in the background in order for the foreground, in order for the daytime to work really well for you. And this is really a great metaphor for how blood sugar plays into it. So what do we do around this? And the simple steps for you to begin with, you can certainly book a free consultation with me and talk about metabolic typing, dive deep into how to actually create your fuel mixture, and make sure you understand how to eat for your body type. Because when you do that, you feel well, right? You feel energized all day. You're not having these cravings. You're not having cyclical thoughts about food all of the time. We're not having energy highs and energy lows, and nutrition becomes a lot easier when you do that. But how we begin to do this is by creating really great routine for our body. So we want to make sure when we wake up that we're not skipping meals, that we're fueling our body within the first 2 hours of waking. And if you're a morning worker-outer, I know that's not a term, but if you like to wake up and work out, before you eat, some of the things that can be something that can be very beneficial for you is to have a little bit of protein, or even a little bit of protein and carbohydrates before you do your workout. If you can kind of get that in, half an hour to an hour. And I know some of us don't like to work with a lot of food or work out with a lot of food in our system, but when you have a little bit, maybe a smoothie, maybe a shake, a protein shake can be a really great thing in there to give your body a bit of energy to push through your workout. That can really help with the fact that first thing in the morning, typically our cortisol is at the highest. And if we're working out fasted, that can cause more issues for us. So it can just decrease that real cortisol load on the body and give us the energy we need to push harder in a workout. If you're not a morning worker outer, then you want to wake up and you want to eat a proper breakfast within 2 hours of waking. And you want to eat enough in that breakfast to keep you full and satisfied for 4 to 5 hours until that next meal. So if you're waking up at 6, we're going to want to eat around 8 a.m. We're going to eat lunch again around, 4 to 5 hours later, so around 12 or 1. And we're going to eat enough in that lunch to keep us full and satisfied until dinner. So we're going to eat again, for dinner around 5 or 6 p.m. And then if you have to go longer, if you're going to bed later than 10 p.m., which we shouldn't because that's going to cause some other issues in your body. But if you have to once in a while, or you have to go longer between breakfast or lunch and dinner, which sometimes we do with what's going on in life. Maybe work gets in the way or kid pickup or, activities, things that are happening. That's when we want to have a snack, a glycemically balanced snack. So you want to have something that maybe has a little bit of protein and a little bit of carbohydrates in there. At night, some of my favorite nighttime snacks, if my dinner hasn't kept me full and satisfied or I've had to stay up later than I want to. Some of my favorite things are, if you do okay with dairy, like some Greek yogurt and berries, or just a little handful of nuts, or like an apple and nut butter, something like that, where you're getting that combination of protein, fats, and carbohydrates right in there. So your body has something to work with in the night. You don't want it to be big because we don't want to be dealing with digestion, and you want to have it at least an hour before bed. But if you are waking up in the night and you're wondering, maybe I'm not eating enough, or maybe I'm not eating properly, or I'm having these cravings, these cyclical food thoughts, these energy ups and downs and crashes, dysregulated blood sugar might be your issue. And we really want to create consistency with when we're going to bed, when we're waking up, and when we're eating this food. So that's number one. Number two is the second reason that you might not be able to sleep, especially if you're waking up between 2 and 4 a.m., is that you have too much cortisol in your body. Cortisol is really, our stress hormone that happens, when we experience stress, whether it's something we're experiencing outside of us or something that our body is experiencing from eating something that's not right for us. And what you want to recognize is that between 2 and 4 a.m., two things are happening. One, that is our typical liver self-clean time. And the liver has a massive role. Its job is to do a lot of things in your body, but specifically to metabolize hormones and clear out toxins in the body. So it's working through any excess cortisol that you have. It's also working through metabolizing your excess hormones or the unused hormones that we don't need anymore. And if we have too much cortisol and stress going on in our life, and again, this can come from anywhere. This can come from our regular life stresses and kids, relationship, work, finances, all of those things. It can come from toxins in our air, on our body, in our water, in our life, in so many areas of where we come from, and certainly it can come from eating things that aren't agreeing with our body. But if we have too much cortisol, that is the time when between 2 and 4 a.m. when your body naturally gets a little bit of cortisol so that it can start to wake us up at an appropriate hour, like 6, 7 a.m. So if you are waking up at 2 to 4 a.m., it's often because you have too much cortisol already and your body's not metabolizing it properly. So we have a bit of a backed up congested liver, a backed up detoxification pathway. And this new cortisol that is supposed to kind of naturally come and wake us up as a part of our circadian rhythm gets poured on top of this other cortisol, and then we wake up and we get racy, right? Our mind starts going and we can't get ourselves back to sleep because we have too much cortisol pumping through the veins. And cortisol is really designed for our survival. It comes in to help us get through difficult situations and almost gives us a bit of superhuman power. So if we have too much stress going on in our body, in our life, from the things we're doing, from the things we can't control, then we're going to wake up between 2 and 4 a.m. pretty typically and have a very difficult time getting back to sleep. So what do we do when this situation happens? This is when we want to take a really good look at our life and at the food we are eating. And if we are eating things that are upsetting our body, if we're eating things that add too much cortisol to our body, and we all know these things, right? If we're drinking too much or drinking frequently, if we're having too much caffeine or having caffeine on an empty stomach, if we're over exercising and we don't actually have that energy for it, if we're eating a lot of sugar or processed foods, excuse me, or anything really that's causing issues, irritating the body in some way, then we're going to be elevating the cortisol in our body. So we really want to be conscious, especially when we are in this perimenopause time, because remember, perimenopause is an added workload to the body. And if we don't have enough energy to support that workload, if we don't have enough energy supply to support that, it's going to drop us into this really exhaustive phase in our body. And that's when we continue to see more sleep issues. So if we're having this issue with too much cortisol and you're waking up between 2 and 4 a.m., one of the best things that you can do, again, is look at your nutrition, pull back on your fitness, start to implement, again, real consistency for those foundations of health, treating your body almost like a baby, where you have this routine of when you go to bed, when you wake up, even if you're not sleeping perfectly in there, when you're eating, and starting to implement some real stress management tactics in your life to help mitigate this elevation of cortisol that you might be experiencing. And most often I find sleep improves not overnight for people, because it can take a little bit of time, but sleep can significantly improve when we start to pull back on the other stressors in our life. And certainly another great tactic that you can put into play is making sure that at least an hour before bed that you are getting off screens, that you are, starting a bedtime routine or having good sleep hygiene. Maybe you are having a hot shower to kind of bring yourself into relaxation, making sure your room is nice and clean, reading a book, writing, just doing some deep breathing, making love, whatever it is for you, just winding down that part of your life so that you are going to bed with lower levels of cortisol and that your body is feeling more relaxed and safe. So we're not hitting this 2 to 4 a.m. pocket and having already too much cortisol in the cup, so that when the body pours some in for that natural wake rhythm, that we're not spilling over into our system and waking us up and keeping us stuck in this now I can't get back to sleep situation. Because especially if you're waking up between 2 and 4 a.m., if you're up at 4 and you can't get back to sleep, it might take you, maybe it'll take you an hour, but by then it's 5 and a lot of us have to get up not that much longer. So some of us just end up waking up and now we're already in that sleep deficit. And as we know, sleep is so critical for women in perimenopause. It's so critical for helping to balance our hormones, heal our body, repair from workouts, lose weight, all of those things. All right, so number 3, the third reason you can't sleep in perimenopause and what to do now has to do with your hormones. If you don't have enough progesterone, so if your hormones are imbalanced and you don't have enough progesterone, that can start to cause issues for us, especially again between 2 and 4 a.m. Progesterone is really a very calming hormone for us. It is meant to kind of come into play right after ovulation and kind of keep us in a more chill state. So if we don't have enough progesterone, which is really one of the first problems we run into in the earlier years of perimenopause, is that starts to decrease. And of course, it's tied very closely to cortisol. If you have too much stress in your body, then you're likely not going to have enough progesterone. So that can be one of the issues, or estrogen. So if you have not enough estrogen, as our estrogen declines in the later years of perimenopause, we can lose some real elasticity in our body. So if you're waking up and you're urinating a lot, or you always have to pee, this can be part of that reason we don't have enough estrogen. So what do we do about these two things? Well, first and foremost, regulating your blood sugar, really mitigating the stress in your life, pulling back on that energy demand and improving the energy supply with all the tips I've already given you are going to make sure that your body is in a place to produce the amount of hormones that it needs, to metabolize them in that liver if we decongest it, and to absorb it in our cells. But if you are still having issues with this is when you really want to think about getting some functional testing done. So one of my favorite functional tests is a stress hormone panel. It's a simple lab that you do at home where you spit into a vial 4 times of the day. And what we can get out of that, the markers we can get out of that is what your cortisol levels are at the 4 different times of the day. We can get an understanding of what your estrogen levels are, your progesterone levels are, and your testosterone levels, as well as your melatonin. And we can really see their relationship to one another. So we don't just want to see the amounts that we have. We want to know, do they have a proper relationship? Because if the relationship is off, that can indicate some other issues going on in the body that we want to take a look at, and not just kind of add in some other hormones. But if we can see in that test, and I'm a really big believer in test, don't guess, so that we're not just adding more mess to the mix. If we do a test, then we can really start to recognize if we need more of something. And we can start with nutrition, we can start with bioidenticals, whatever your body is going to need, but we need to see those lab markers first. We need to understand how that's feeling. Because when we recognize, okay, maybe the hormones are off, maybe your estrogen and progesterone are off, but gosh, your cortisol is completely dysregulated. Often when we regulate the cortisol and we support the liver, then these hormones can come back into balance on their own. And we're not just taking more hormones and adding more work for the liver to do. So it is really, really important. And of course, all of these 3 pieces of the puzzle impact, as I said, the other systems of the body. So if there is an issue, if you are having dysregulated blood sugar, if you have a congested liver, if your hormones are off, we might start to see some issues with your thyroid, or perhaps we're not breaking down our macronutrients and our proteins. The body really needs a lot of micronutrients during this time. So maybe we're not getting enough vitamins or minerals. And it's really, really important that we don't just go blindly purchase supplements and take them, but that we test and not guess, that we really can see what our body needs at that time. So if you are needing some functional testing, you're interested in learning about it, make sure you swipe up and book a free consultation with me. This is what we talk about, where you're at, what's really going on, what these main complaints are, and if I can help, what that looks like and what that might mean if we're going to look at some lab testing. So you have that available to you. But most importantly is that you have some really key tips that you don't have to suffer in perimenopause. You don't have to suffer without sleep. We can work on this problem. I know it's a big issue for so many of us, myself included. And as I said at the beginning, there's nothing more exhausting than wanting to sleep and not being able to sleep. And it really spins you into a bit of a tough pattern. So if we're not sleeping well, then we often are going to start to crave sugar more, which is going to throw off our blood sugar further. It's going to congest our liver further. It's going to back up our hormones further. So we really want to get on top of this piece of the puzzle. All right, sister, now you know 3 reasons you're not sleeping that might not just be, I'm in perimenopause and it is what it is. Dysregulated blood sugar, too much cortisol, a congested liver, and of course, yes, it might be that we don't have enough of one of these hormones, or that they are out of balance. Not just that we don't have enough of them. Maybe it's just that they're out of balance. Reach out if I can help. Book one of those free consultations. Let's talk about where you are at. And go out, be more in your life and not just less on a scale. We'll catch you next time.
Thank you so much for joining me on the Period Whisperer podcast. If you liked this episode, take 30 seconds right now to write a review on iTunes, and then reach out to me directly on Instagram at Bria_period_whisperer and message me there with a screenshot of your review. As a thank you, I will give you a customized free hormone audit to get you on your way to the best health of your life in midlife.